in the management of the type 2 diabetes. Uh, Basically, we'll start with a case. Suppose this is an arbitrary case. Mr. SB is a 59 years old widower uh, um, who has had type 2 diabetes for 4 years and was diagnosed incidentally through a routine health checkup. Because of his A1C of 7.5%, his primary care provider started him on metformin 4 years ago. As of the guideline, as all the guidelines says, the first drug to be used, the metformin. So as per the all international and national guidelines, the primary care physician started with metformin. And now he has a restaurant carry out food for dinner about 5 times per month. Occasional complaining of abdominal cramping, nausea, bloating, and the diarrhea. So this may be maybe the nausea, bloating, diarrhea is a side effect after the intake of the metformin. So it may be related to the diabetes itself, the drug itself. That is, metformin can cause all sorts of problem. Now, the problem, but another point to be kept in mind that as the duration of the diabetes is not so high, maybe the 4 years, but actually incidentally diagnosed, so we could not know what is the exact duration of the diabetes. So in that cases, there is another possibility is the diabetic autonomic neuropathy. In that cases, the diarrhea occurs. In that cases, the special features of nocturnal diarrhea is the special feature of diabetic autonomic neuropathy. This is very, very important. One of the important history is that the nocturnal diarrhea. The রাতে ঘুমের মধ্যে diarrhea হচ্ছে, পায়খানা করে ফেলছেন, or urinary incontinence or stool incontinence. These are the signs of the autonomic neuropathy. Probably this is not the case. This is probably the side effect of the metformin that is causing the nausea, bloating, and the diarrhea. And another signs of in this regard, I want to mention about the early morning rigidness of the penis is a definitive indicator that patient does not have any. The patient usually does not have the organic disorder. So early morning rigidness of the penis is indicative that if the patient complains of the I am diabetic, having the erectile dysfunction, but again this is also it's an autonomic phenomena. So if this is present, that is early morning penile rigidness is there, that means this is not a actual erectile dysfunction due to the diabetes. It is actually a functional, maybe the functional one of the components. So this is another history. The two history is very important: nocturnal diarrhea and the early morning penile rigidness. This is the 2 points that dictate about the diabetic autonomic neuropathy. Now coming to the case, his exercise is limited by right knee osteoarthritis. The patient having osteoarthritis, probably patient have a obesity also, because diabetes does not directly related to the osteoarthritis. The obesity is leading to the diabetes, and ultimately leads to the osteoarthritis. So this is our case. Now type 2 diabetes of 4 years duration with metformin 2 grams per day, and this is the complaining of side effects, and this patient having osteoarthritis. Now, if you go through the past medical history, also patient is also taking the hypertension, and patient was on etelmistatin, and for hyperlipidemia patient was on atorvastatin, and for right knee osteoarthritis, right knee osteoarthritis is there. A right hip replacement at the age of 54 years also there. Patient having a multiple osteoarthritis. Known case of heart failure since 4 years with LV ejection fraction of 35%. Now compare this. This is a very important slide. In this regard, something to comment on it. Suppose patient having hypertension with a diabetes. Okay. Now why the patient has been given the telmisartan? Why not the amlodipine? This is a very question. Why the telmisartan or amlodipine? If you consider in a diabetic with hypertension, what drug should be used? If you think patient diabetes having no other complication, then a CCB, amlodipine, or AC or ARV both can be given. But if the patient having a diabetes with some sorts of complications, especially the urinary albumin creatinine ratio or ACR is increased or urinary microalbumin is there, in that cases, that AC or ARB must be given. So this is very important in this regard, the hypertension management. So suppose if you are not able to detect the urinary albumin creatinine ratio or your patient is not able to afford it, then it is better to start the AC inhibitor. If it is not tolerated, then the ARB. Now regarding the hyperlipidemia and the atorvastatin 10 milligram. So the diabetes patient, so it's a case of 59 years of age. So in this case, the hyperlipidemia was there. So obviously the primary care physician advised atorvastatin 10 milligram. But even without absence, without hyperlipidemia, or if the lipid parameter is normal, in that cases also patient needs atorvastatin. Why? What is the guideline says about that? The guideline says that the 40 to 75 years age of diabetic, in that cases, irrespective of the lipid status, the diabetic patient should get the benefit of the statin, and moderate dose of statin, 10 to 20 milligram of statin is mandatory in that cases. So again, this is an important. Now patient also having a heart failure. Now this heart failure, probably the type of heart failure is the ejection fraction is the 35% is very less. So heart failure of reduced ejection fraction, HFRF. So heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Now, if you consider this is the guideline, what medicine you also should get. Actually, if you consider, if you criticize this case history, now, sorry, I want to criticize this case history because for criticism, you also need some criticism because that the why the patient having a heart failure, but the no drug is mentioned about the heart failure. So one drug is AC inhibitor, ARV is given. Okay, this is the good drug for heart failure. But we know in respect of the diabetes, the beta blocker is actually contraindicated not to be given. Okay, but here as the patient having a heart failure or cardiac disease, probably of ischemic origin, so in that cases the beta blocker should be given. This is a compelling indication of beta blocker in a diabetic. Otherwise, normally you should not prescribe beta blocker in a diabetic patient, but diabetic with a coronary artery disease or with a heart failure, in that cases beta blocker is mandatory. So in the background of the heart failure, the best beta blocker is metoprolol, bisoprolol, or carvedilol. So patient must have this group of drug in the past medical history. Another drug, as the reduced ejection fraction is there, so probably the patient also should get the diuretic. Now regarding the diuretic management, if the patient, the diuretic management, the chlorthalidone is the best diuretic in respect to the hydrochlorothiazide, or indapamide is also best drug in comparison to hydrochlorothiazide. So chlorthalidone or indapamide should be given in these patients. So that means the heart failure management was not properly taken care. Patient should have the beta blocker, either carvedilol, bisoprolol, or metoprolol, any one of them. Heart diuretic, either chlorthalidone or indapamide. Or if the patient have a renal failure, that is eGFR, GFR is less than 30, in that case the loop diuretic is the choice. In that, no other alternative. And now another point is that patient having a reduced ejection fraction, probably in the background of CAD, the patient must have the spironolactone. So these are the point I want to, this is the incomplete history, and this is actually arbitrary history. This has been given, setup has been done only to invoke the thought, the why the patient should not have any drug or anything. What are the criticism is there in the management? Now, if you go through the parameters, the height, weight is obese, and that's I was talking about the obesity leading to the osteoarthritis. This is the most important. Obesity may be one of the cause of insulin resistance, leading to the whatever with the hypertension, diabetes, etc. And BMI is more than 30. That is patient having a morbid obesity. and the blood pressure is still, as per the guideline, if you think is 146/80, it actually not reaching the target. You must reach the target. So in that cases, better the target is at the best target is 130/80, because also the patient having heart failure, so it is better 130/80. 130/80 is the target of diabetic until and unless you get a side effect from the antihypertensive drugs. That's why. So target is 130/80. So here is the 146/80. That is a little bit high. So in that cases, if you add a low dose of beta blocker, carvedilol 3.125 BD or bisoprolol 2.5 OD, whatever may be, or a little bit of diuretic will cause a lowering of this blood pressure. Limited range of motion in the right knee, we know this is a past history of the hip surgery, so that is also leading to the less physical movement. That is also leading to the one of the cause of obesity and the weight gain. No peripheral neuropathy, that the patient does not have any signs of gloves and stockings area or numbness, tingling. This is on the absent in this group of patient. So the distal sensory neuropathy is not there. And if I go through the lab investigation, random blood sugar is 204. It's a high. A1C is above the goal is 8.2%. So above the goal of 7. Normal liver and kidney function. That is patient liver function is normal. SGOT, SGBT is usually raised in a case of diabetes because of the fatty liver, which is often associated with that of the diabetes, because diabetes leads to the insulin resistance, and insulin resistance ultimately leads to the fatty liver. So if you find any patient of fatty liver, you must not forget to test for the diabetes in that group of patients. So there are retrospective diabetes. Now, TC is 129, TG is 81, is almost in the normal range. So that's why here the lipid parameter is almost normal. In spite of that, as the patient is in the age group of 40 to 75 years age, so in that group of patient has given a atorvastatin 10 milligram. HDL, LDL is almost normal. So the Mr. SB did not want to stay any injectable medication at the present moment. Now, why this is written here? As per the guideline, after metformin, yes, any drug is the second line of choice. You can use any drug, even you can use the injectable insulin also. Insulin also comes in the second position. So along with the oral anti-diabetic agent, the insulin is also in the second position. So you may advise the insulin in that group of patient, but patient is not want to take insulin. Now you have to go for the second line of drug. Question is, what are the options for additional agents after metformin? I think this is $1 million question. How will you? There are so many controversies about the second line of agent. So that's why all the international guidelines are, they till now recommend, yes, if there is an, until and unless there is a compelling indication, you can use any one from the second line agent after metformin. Any drug can be used. But the recent guideline says that if the patient having diabetes with the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is already there, so in that cases, ideally the SGLT2 inhibitor should be the prescribed one. Here, as per the theoretical aspect, patient having heart failure with ejection fraction 35%. So ideal drug in this patient is actually, if you consider the SGLT2 inhibitor, where the heart failure is there. So in the heart failure means that patient having a CAD, coronary disease, that leading to the MI and leading to the heart failure. So it's a coronary disease, that means an established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So as per the recent guidelines, this patient should have benefit of SGLT2 inhibitor. But the cost of the SGLT2 inhibitors, preferably suppose the patient you want to give the canagliflozin in this group of patients. So canagliflozin, the dose of 100 milligram of dose of canagliflozin, the cost is 52, 53, 55 milligram, 55 rupees per day. So is a very, very costly drug. Now, the Mr. SB says that I am not able to take this amount of drug. Now we describe the second line, another second. Now, what are the advantage and disadvantage of the different classes of agent? That should be done. Now, this is an ideal scenario, but as the patient is not affording in these cases, So I have to go for the alternative. Now what are the alternative is there? Now if you have to consider the alternative, you must have a knowledge about the advantage of that drug and disadvantage of that drug, class of the drug, and what is recommended by the consensus guidelines. So regarding this, one point is that we know the metformin is the fast drug. No question about this, no doubt about this. Now, the recent trial has came out with a big putting a big question on this, whether the metformin should be the first line or drug, or whether the metformin or the vildagliptin should be combined from the very beginning. Now this is the verified trial. In the verified trial says that if you add metformin and after 3 months of harsh doses of metformin 2 gram and patient does not reach the control of hemoglobin A1c 7%, under 7%, in that cases you may combine. In that cases you add a second line, and after that second line you want anyone, suppose vildagliptin added after 3 months of metformin, and when you reach the hemoglobin A1c, it's a too much time taken. So if that means in this period your blood sugar is uncontrolled. But if I add vildagliptin with the metformin from the very beginning, then this trial says that the effective reduction of hemoglobin A1c less than 7% is a very early and very early reduction of hemoglobin A1c below 7%, and the side effect profile of metformin also can be reduced because we are using the metformin with a low to moderate dose with the vildagliptin. So that's why the side effect of the metformin, suppose this patient was having abdominal pain, cramping, diarrhea, bloating, so this type of side effect can be avoided with a maximum chance of reduction of hemoglobin A1c less than 7%. So consider the verified trial. So in verified trial, it has clearly demonstrated that metformin plus vildagliptin, its study was done with the vildagliptin only. So if you want to elaborate with the class effect, then you can other DPP4 inhibitor. But metformin plus vildagliptin, the study was done with the vildagliptin. So this study says that combination is better and better, and the goal is reached very early without any side effect. So if you consider this study is a very landmark study, then the metformin plus vildagliptin can be added, and or the metformin, after the metformin, vildagliptin should be the second one. Now, what are the option of additional agent? You can use the sulfonylurea. This is a poor man's drug, very important. Sulfonylurea is a very good drug for reducing the hemoglobin A1c, blood sugar level, but there is a high chance of the hypoglycemia. So sulfonylurea is a hypoglycemia, and there is a low durability of the drug is not there. So after some time, sulfonylurea failure or OAD failure is an obvious phenomenon. Pioglitazone is a very good drug, again is also very good drug, but it is also a side effect. I'm coming later on. And this is also, pioglitazone is also almost a poor man's, but this is a less chance of hypoglycemia, but some other bladder cancer, the debate about the side effect about the bladder cancer is there. Alpha glucosidase inhibitor is not a very good drug, but on the background of obesity, on the patient having a high intake of carbohydrate, in that group of patients, those who are overeater or those who are more carbohydrate eater, in that group of patients, especially the Indian and Asian population, they are more rice intaker. In that group of patients, alpha glucosidase inhibitor is a very good drug. So that's why until the recent guideline, in the previous guideline, you could not find the alpha glucosidase inhibitor in the ADA 2016, because that's why nowadays they also recommending the alpha glucosidase inhibitor. A DPP4 inhibitor is a very good drug. I'm coming, and SGLT2 inhibitor. And the insulin is there, but today's topic is not on the insulin. Now, AGI as the second line of therapy. The pros are there. They reduces the main AGI are mainly used to reduce the postprandial blood sugar. When the patient, those who are taking the large amount of carbohydrate, in that cases, you better to use the alpha glucosidase inhibitor, either acarbose or voclibose. The beauty of this, the no hypoglycemia occurs. Good add-on drug. It's an add-on drug, not a metformin. You can add on, or any stage of the diabetic management you can add on. Ideal for an obese and vegetarian patients. And here one point to be noted in there, the patient is taking the AGI with some other drug also. Now they develop hypoglycemia. Normally, is a mild hypoglycemia. In that case, we often I ask the patient to take whatever you have, biscuit is there in your hand, but or if you can use the lunch, dinner or lunch, dinner rice or whatever you have your hand, but not the sugar in the first chance until you are very severe hypoglycemia. So in mild to moderate hypoglycemia, but patient is on a AGI, it is better to advise them to take the sugar in all stages of hypoglycemia, even in the mild to moderate hypoglycemia. Because if you give on a biscuit, 2 or 3 biscuit patient is taking, but the AGI is in the system, this will prevent again the absorption of the glucose, digestion of the biscuit, and then again the absorption. So there will be delayed hypoglycemia. So those patients who are taking AGI, having hypoglycemia with other drug, usually it does not itself cause hypoglycemia, but when it is combined with the, suppose patient is combined with the glimepiride, in that cases, it may cause hypoglycemia. But here again and again, you have to tell the patient, you must have to take the sugar when you feel a hypoglycemia symptoms. Otherwise, it is an important issue to them. And cons, main problem of this, the pros and cons. The cons is the GI side effect, flatulence, abdominal pain, bloating, all are there. And hepatotoxicity is also important, contraindicated in the later stage of renal failure. Okay, and not in the early stage, in the later stage of renal failure. Now, so what are the points usually we taken? So if you consider these are the point hypoglycemia, there are not hypoglycemia neutral, so weight neutral, renal and GI neutral, usually GI side effects moderate, and the CHF, CVD, it is a neutral effect can be given, no effect on the bone marrow. So patient having a BMI 31 kg. So if you consider the obesity in that group of patient, so if you think the yes, the AGI could be one of the choice. Very important. If the patient is overweight, our case, the instead SB, the BMI is 31 kg. So in that cases, so weight, but the in that cases obesity. But one point that obesity does not mean that after giving the acarbose, the obesity will reduce. Obesity will not reduce. Again, the point should be kept in because this is weight neutral. But here the it may be the overeater. So in that cases, the may be helpful. But it is a side effect, is abdominal pain, cramping, nausea, bloating already there. So on the background of this, suppose if you consider the BMI, is the obesity is there, yes, AGI could be one of the choice. But already patient having a side effect of AGI. If you add a AGI on this background, probably the patient will have a more side effect. So it is not a good choice. Now come to the thiazolidine redundance as a second line. It's a very, in the sense, I think so, it's a very, very good drug, and poor is also a very poor man drugs. Now the pros, there's good insulin sensitizer because we have a insulin resistance, and this is a very, very insulin sensitizer. And that's a very ideal drug for a diabetic patient in the second line of management. No hypoglycemia. It also increases HDL, reduces TG. There's a better effect on the lipid parameter. Possible CB benefit is there. The proactive trial shows that patient having a cardiovascular benefit. So cardiovascular benefit is also there, but it's not that we need a more large trial. Only the proactive trial is, and that's why it is calling the possible, not a very proven. Recent data, no increased risk of bladder cancer. There's a few years back, there was an whip that pioglitazone should not be used, or it should be used very, very cautiously because it can cause the bladder cancer. But the so many randomized meta-analysis, so many meta-analysis has been done, and it has been clearly indicated, clearly shown that until the exposure is very, very high, then the chance of bladder cancer is very less. So actually this is overall cancer is actually 32% lower in patient with the glutathione, pioglitazone. So that's very important. So cancer risk is actually diabetes itself is a pro-cancerous disease. So diabetes itself causes the cancer. So that's why the diabetic patient having a high chance of cancer. So the pioglitazone causes the cancer or diabetes itself causes the cancer. Initially it was thought the pioglitazone causing the cancer, but later on said not, is not the fact. That one point is that more than 2.5 gram pioglitazone, 2500 milligram pioglitazone, and for more than 2 years may be cautious. You must be cautious in a patient who have a history of family history of bladder cancer, who have a family history of bladder cancer, or patient having a chronic cystitis, unexplained cystitis. So in that group of patient, better not to use the pioglitazone. Otherwise, you can use pioglitazone. And low cost in our country. It's a poor man's drug, but it's a poor man's, but very good. In respect, if you allow me to give a standpoint, this should be the first line in comparison. If you under poor man's drug, this is the first line poor man's drug, and sulfur is the second line poor man's drug. But again, these are the pros. The cons are there. Patient is the patient having edema. So that's why those patient having a edema should not be given. Those patient having a heart failure, this also not be. So risk of edema means weight gain. That means water retention. So there is also chance of heart failure. Edema leading to the heart failure. So those patients have already heart failure. We are using diuretic. Again, if we in that background, if we use the pioglitazone, obviously pioglitazone will cause increased chance of heart failure because of the water retention. And water retention is also leads to the edema, weight gain, and another side effect is the bone fracture. Pioglitazone in the osteoporosis, the elderly patient, they are having osteoporosis, they can cause the bone fracture. So in that group of patient, better to add calcium along with the pioglitazone. And there is a very, very rare chance of the macular edema. So these are the hypoglycemia neutral. Weight gain is very, very important. CHF effect is very, very moderate. You should not use because it increases the CHF, and moderate bone loss is there, and no GI side effects. Here, the patient having already BMI is more than 31. So in that cases, if I use the pioglitazone in that cases, that there will be more weight gain, so weight will increase. So it's not a good choice. And again, the patient having a heart failure. So in that case, patient ejection fraction 35%. So it is not a very good choice. Now, patient having a moderate bone loss is there, is the one of the side effect. The patient is already having a right knee osteoarthritis and limited physical activity. So there is always a chance of osteoporosis. And if you add a pioglitazone in this patient, so maybe in this patient is not a good drug choice. But in overall, it's one of the best, one of the drug for second line. Now the gliptin is very, very important drug. The gliptin is the second line therapy. The pros is a weight neutral, does not increase or decrease the weight. Low risk of hypoglycemia when used alone or with metformin. But it can cause hypoglycemia if you add other drug. But why this happen? It does not cause hypoglycemia because it actually causes glucose dependent mechanism is there. If the high glucose is there, that will be effective. If this is low glucose, it is not effective. That is actually its effect is mediated by the glucagon. When the high glucose is there, it suppresses the glucagon. When the low glucose is there, it increases the glucagon. That's why its hypoglycemia is very, very rare. And side effect is very, very less. Only the very few side effects. The non-specific DPP4 inhibitor, the DPP4 inhibitor also block the DPP1, DPP9. In that cases, nasopharyngitis, and very nasopharyngitis may occur. Very rarely pancreatitis can occur. Very rarely. The cardiac safe, which has been different study shows that the DPP4 inhibitor is cardiac friendly, though no cardiac mortality is increased. And modest efficacy, beta hemoglobin A1C reduction, average 0.7. The cons is that theoretical risk of pancreatitis, but in practical field, we are suppose if you ask me how many patients you have deal with the pancreatitis patient getting the gliptin, have some if I my data shows that I did not actually faces one never faces a pancreatitis with a gliptin, and there is a very rare chance of urticaria, angioedema with any hypersensitivity reaction to any drugs. Now here, if you think that each and drug, there every parameter is according to the guideline. Hypoglycemia is neutral, weight neutral, renal side effect, yes, renal and GI maybe usually the dose adjustment usually necessary, but is not actually contraindicated. That's a very important point. Patient, yes, renal failure, all the gliptin can be given with a reduced dose, but except the linagliptin and teneligliptin, which can be given without dose adjustment, but all other gliptin can be used. It's not contraindicated in renal failure, but dose should be reduced. And the GI side effects, no GI side effects, CHA effect and cardiovascular disease neutral, bone neutral. Okay. So patient having abdominal pain, cramping, nausea, bloating, diarrhea. So no GI side effects. So already patient having GI side effect. If I use the gliptin, so there is no side effect will not be increased. So better to choose this one. Patient having a heart failure. So heart failure, gliptin is a cardiac. It does not increase the cardiac mortality or heart failure. This is very important. It does not increase the rate of hospitalization for heart failure. So this is an important drug. So it's a choice. This patient should have an ideal choice of gliptin in these cases. Patient having a right knee osteoarthritis, so the patient always has chance of limited movement osteoporosis. Again, is a bone does not hamper the osteoporosis or the bone mineral density does not decrease with the drug. So it's a good drug. So if we consider all the parameter except the renal parameter, where the only the you need to reduce the dose of gliptin, otherwise it's no issue in a renal failure also. So that's why if you consider all the points, then DPP-4 inhibitor has a good effect in all parameter of hypoglycemia, weight gain, renal failure, GI side effects, CHF or CVD and the bone disease. Now SGLT2 inhibitor as a second line of therapy. Yes, very positive effect is again the same, no hypoglycemia. Weight reduction is there because it causes the glucose actually is being out through urine. So the glucose actually, that means we are losing the calorie. So because one gram of glucose ultimately leading to the leads to the 4.5 calories. Here the calorie reduction is there, so the weight reduction is also there. As the glucose is being excreted through the urine, it is an osmotically active agent. It is also taking out the water. So that's why the weight reduction. But this weight reduction is transient. Initial 1 to 2 months, 3 months, the weight reduction are there. But after that, it does not reduce the weight. Just 1 or 2 kg weight reduction is maximum possible. As the water is being taken out through the urine along with the glucose, some sorts of sodium is also excreted. So blood volume reduction, some sodium excretion through urine leading to the blood pressure reduction. But cons is that as the glucose is being excreted through the urinary tract, so there is a genital infection, increased genital infection, and the fungal infection is very, very important point. And if you give the SGLT2 inhibitor in any patient, you must tell that this may be the one of the side effect. You must inform that if this happens to you, and immediately you have to give some antifungal in that cases and ask the patient to basically take care of the genitalia so that the infection does not occur. And this is a very new drug. Long-term safety data not available. Only the recent credence trial says that if you use it in a diabetic, it increases that it actually improves the renal function. So that initially it was that eGFR was 45 was cutoff value, but now the eGFR 30, up to the eGFR 30, you can use the SGLT2 inhibitor. So diabetic patient with the renal dysfunction, SGLT2 inhibitor may be one of the important consideration because it decreases the chance of the renal failure progression in the long term. This is the credence trial. And the heart failure. In this patient is having a heart failure, but here the SGLT2 inhibitor again is one of the important consideration here because the DAPA HF heart failure trial shows that that any SGLT2 inhibitor is basically in the background of heart failure or in the background of established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. These are the very important drugs. And another also drug is there, not that is the GLP. GLP is actually is also important, but there is injection form. That's why I'm not talking about that. So this is also an important drug. So if you in our patient, if you consider in our patient, in this group patient, the BMI is okay, BMI is high. So if you use this is the weight loss. Maybe they have a 1 or 2 kg weight loss there. Blood pressure is high. Suppose in the group patient, our blood pressure was 146 by 80, but our target is 130 by 80. So in that case, if I use this drug, maybe the blood pressure, this minor amount of blood pressure reduction is possible with that of the SGLT. Not a very major blood pressure reduction is possible. Now this is also patient having a heart failure. So again, it will reduce the water load or preload because water will be excreted through the glucose through urine. Sodium is also to some extent excreted. So there is a chance of that will decrease blood volume or preload. So heart failure is reduced. So, but the hyperlipidemia is also the patient in this group of patient. It has been shown that one of the drawback of the SGLT inhibitor, how this happens, what is the exact cause is not clear, but SGLT2 inhibitor can increase the LDL level. That's also one of the drawback of the SGLT inhibitor, it increase the LDL level. But here, if you consider this is the fact, then it's not a good choice. Only this in this respect is not a good choice. Another point is not here mentioned. Some drugs causes the bone fracture. Some causes the bone fracture, osteoporosis. So this is some SGLT inhibitor causes bone fracture. Some causes amputation. Empagliflozin causes amputation, and basically these are the dapagliflozin causes cancer. So these are the few side effects. So dapagliflozin or any, it can cause the fracture, it can cause the osteoporosis, or it can cause the cancer. It can increases the chance of whatever we are talking about, the amputation. So these are the some side effects. But in the hair, if you consider all the aspects, all are okay except the hyperlipidemia. It can increase the LDL. So AIC reduction is DPP for the SGLT2 inhibitor is only 0.7, but all other drug may be the high, and the insulin is the highest. No question about the highest. DPP4 inhibitors. So if you come to the combat here, in our case, the DPP4 inhibitor is the good choice in all respect. So in the now which DPP? Sitagliptin, vildagliptin, linagliptin, teneligliptin, saxagliptin. So here basically the inhibition of plasma DPP4 activity is almost all are more than 80% except the teneligliptin. That's why the effectivity you can face this scenario. The teneligliptin in some patient it is reducing the blood sugar very well, but in some patient it actually does not causing the satisfactory blood sugar reduction, because this is the inhibition of the plasma DPP4 activity is not sufficient. To be more effective, it must be more than 80%. And GLP-1 levels are increased. That is almost more than twofold or 1.5 to twofold in all cases. And the dosing frequency, sitagliptin OD, vildagliptin BD, and all are OD. Normal kidney function, if the normal kidney function, then the dose should be 100 milligram. Sitagliptin, vildagliptin 50 milligram BD, that means 100 milligram. Linagliptin 5 milligram, teneligliptin 20 milligram, saxagliptin 5 milligram. But when there is a reduction of the EGFR, that is 30 to 50 ml per minute, then usually we make it half. So 100 to 50, 100 to 50. But linagliptin does not, linagliptin and teneligliptin does not require dose reduction. So these are the remain same. Saxagliptin even half. And the creatinine clearance when less than 30, then again make it half. So 50 to 25, 50 to 50. Here is also 50 to 50 can be used in a case of vildagliptin. So that is but this does not require any dose reduction. Now CV safety, yes. Now CV safety data, what is about the CV safety data? If you consider the CV safety data, yes, in sitagliptin, CV safety is neutral. It does not increase the chance of any cardiac disease. The TICO study shows that vildagliptin also shows that the linagliptin has a definite Carmelina studies there. There is no increased chance of the cardiac side effect, and the teneligliptin does not have any cardio safety data. So that's why in a cardiac patient, it is better not to use the teneligliptin because it can increase the QT prolongation and the some sorts of VTVF. And saxagliptin, one of the very drawback of the saxagliptin is the increased hospitalization rate is increased. So that's why in the CV safety, if you consider CV safety, these three are the choice. Now, what determines the choice against the gliptin? So efficacy, easy to use with other efficacy, there is no question. Efficacy is gliptin is efficacious, easy to use with other OAD, and ease of dosing in comorbidities. Any condition, renal failure, heart failure, it can be given even in a cardiac, even in a stroke patient. And favorable CVOT data is available with the linagliptin, vildagliptin, and even with the sitagliptin, and some other special scenario. So vildagliptin is the first in class islets enhancer. That is, it is an islet enhancer. Why the islet enhancer? We know the vildagliptin or any gliptin, actually it does not have any direct effect on the islet cell, but it has been shown that the vildagliptin, any gliptin has a basically it causes islet enhancer. That is, it prevents the apoptosis of the islet cell. It also prevents it to some extent. It helps in the regeneration of the beta cells. That's why it's very important. And first in class islet enhancer increases activity of the GLP-1 and the GIP. How? Because when the food enters, intestinal release of GLP-1 occurs, and this GLP-1 becomes active, and it causes this active GLP-1 causes increased insulin release. But these active GLP-1 are being destroyed by the DPP-4 enzyme. So, and if these become inactive, so insulin release does not occur. And if we use the DPP-4 inhibitor, this will cause the blockage of this enzyme. So the active GLP-1 will not be inactive. And the potential for disease modification based on the beta cell effect, but it actually increases it decreases the beta cell destruction, or it prevents the apoptosis. To some extent, it increases the beta cell regeneration, and clinically significant and sustained reduction of the hemoglobin 1c. So those already beta DPP-4 enzyme selectivity with the vildagliptin. So teneligliptin 20 mg and vildagliptin 50 mg BD. Now again already mentioned, teneligliptin is very rarely it up to 70%. But the selectivity for DPP-4 enzyme after 24 hours of administration, if the DPP-4 enzyme blockage must be more than 80% to be more effective. So in this regard, if you consider the teneligliptin and vildagliptin, so vildagliptin is a better choice. Now, less selectivity for DPP-9 enzyme. So if the DPP, we are talking about the DPP-4, that is beneficial for the insulin release. But if the patient also having an effect on the DPP-9, suppose the teneligliptin having a selectivity of DPP-9 enzyme is 850 times, so after 24 hours. So in that cases, the side effect of the DPP-9 enzymes blocker, that is nasopharyngitis, pancreatitis, are much more with that of the teneligliptin in comparison to the vildagliptin, because the DPP-9 enzyme are blocking is only 32. So lesser the relative selectivity towards DPP-4. If there is an DPP-9 activity, DPP-9 is blocked much more. So obviously, so DPP-4 blocking will be less. That's why the effect of teneligliptin is to some extent lesser than the all gliptin. The vildagliptin has favorable effect on the down-regulating high degree of insulin resistance. Already mentioned, vildagliptin causes so much of insulin resistance decrease, but that only comparison to teneligliptin is very, very low. Now, more non-HDL reduction with the vildagliptin compared to so non-HDL reduction is more with that of the vildagliptin in comparison to the teneligliptin. Now, why I am given a comparison with the vildagliptin with the teneligliptin? Because nowadays the vildagliptin cost of vildagliptin has dramatically come down. Very low cost price is almost with that of the teneligliptin price. Now, if you consider the cost is, yes, the both two drugs are there. Vildagliptin is there and the teneligliptin is there. But if you consider the other effect on the lipid profile, on the effect of the DPP9 enzyme, on the effect of the cardiovascular aspect, on the effect of the effective blood sugar reduction, the vildagliptin scores over the teneligliptin. That's why if you consider the cost in our country, like in the COVID situation where the financial crisis is there everywhere, in that cases, if you choose, in our case, the gliptin was the important choice in that respect. And if you consider the cost in that cases, among the two, vildagliptin and the teneligliptin has a very good effect on the patient, not the teneligliptin. So in conclusion, holistic therapeutic management necessitates understanding of the pathophysiological mechanism, delay the disease progression by using different drug classes at an early stage of the disease. That is, if you use the gliptin like the vildagliptin with the metformin from the very beginning, it has been shows the progression of the disease. As we know, that diabetes is a progressive disease because of the destruction of the continuous destruction of the beta cell. It has been verified trials clearly shows that the delay the progression of the disease if I combine with the metformin and the vildagliptin from the very beginning. Among the DPP4 inhibitor drug class, vildagliptin has a proven significant favorable profile, but it's more in comparison to the teneligliptin. All other is more or less same. Vildagliptin is well tolerated and efficacious when used as an add-on therapy in the type 2 diabetes. Vildagliptin showed a higher benefit-risk ratio for effective management. The strategy of an early combination treatment approach with the vildagliptin plus metformin in patients with a newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes significantly and consistently improve the long-term glycemic durability compared with the metformin monotherapy. This is the study of verified trial. So verified trial says actually this is newly diagnosed patient, you can better start metformin plus vildagliptin from the very beginning, instead of metformin adding, and after that adding the starting with metformin and adding the vildagliptin later on. So better the verify gives us the shows us the light that we can use the metformin vildagliptin combination from the very beginning. Thank you. Now, if there is any question, I will try to give the answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Will request if any doctors have any query, they can raise their questions so that sir can reply those queries too for all of us. If any queries any doctor have, they can raise their query or questions. Sir, we can wait for a minute or 2 minutes so that
Okay.
if any question will be there.
You can use the chat box. If there is any question, you can put the question in the chat box.